As we head into the winter months, there's one question we consistently get as realtors, and that is it a good time to sell or not? So if you're a seller thinking about putting your home on the market in the winter months, you want to stay tuned to this episode because we're going to dive in and out of whether it's a chilly move to sell in the winter months. The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show dedicated to exploring hot topics in real estate, local happenings, and industry trends. We're a small team of professionals approaching $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 local transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to the Den. Welcome to the Den, everybody. And before we get started today, I want to introduce my co-host to my left. Paul, hand me the rockberry. Melissa, let's go Glasgow.
Let's go.
Aspen, the ninja Gruen. I know she loves that.
I don't know where it came from.
And the boss, Shannon Martin Martinez. Welcome to the Den. My name is Ben Lyons and I'm your host. And today we're going to talk about winter selling. Winter selling is always an interesting topic because people, I don't know if they have misconceptions about the market in winter months, but we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk a little bit about whether it makes sense to put your home on the market. Is it advantageous? So let's kick it off. Melissa, what are your thoughts?
You know, I think that anytime you have to sell is always going to be good because you have a goal you have to meet. But with the rumor that it's a bad time to sell during the winter, if you are selling, that's less competition than you might have in, say, June when everybody's doing it in between the school years. So yeah, it's a good time to sell during the winter. You've got less competition typically.
Yeah. So your thoughts are inventory thins out. Mm-hmm. Buyers still there? Buyers still wanting to buy?
Exactly. They need to purchase and your house is going to stand out. You know, something else too is there's a couple of lenders that'll say, well, what's the Christmas tree factor?
Yeah.
Where are you going to put your Christmas tree?
Sure.
If you already see where it's set up in the house, you're going to get excited.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's kind of fun.
Great point. Aspen, what are your thoughts?
So ever since I got into real estate, aside from the first year, my busiest months every single year have been November, December, January. Every single time. So I do think I agree with Melissa. There's a lot of less competition, which I think is enticing to a lot of people. The only caveat, since I am in New Mexico and Colorado, we do have mud season in Colorado.
Yeah.
So if you are high up in the mountains and there's a lot of mud where maybe people can't get to your house, maybe it makes sense to do it either a little bit earlier around November or a little bit later, March. But as far as San Juan County in New Mexico goes, by far busiest months.
Yeah.
November, December.
Yeah. And some people overlook the mud factor because mud, well, you've been in the oil field. You know those roads all too well. I mean, mud can get ugly quick, even worse than snow. I mean, I hear all kinds of horror stories of.
Well, and snow used to be a lot deeper up in Durango. It's not quite as deep these years, but the mud is definitely, and we have a weird clay around here. So the top gets really slick. You break through that, you just sink to the bottom. So mud season. Yeah,
that's my only caveat is mud season.
Yeah.
But that's very unique to specific homes up in the mountains.
Yeah. Well, you make a good point because it's fun looking back over the years, Shannon. We look at our production that we've done and inevitably there's always a spike of closings in January. It's like a lot of things go under contract, they push through the holidays, and there's big closings that happen in January. And that lends to what you just said is that your biggest months year over year have been November, December, January. And I've seen that same trend in my personal production. But what are your thoughts? Is it advantageous to sell in the winter months or not?
It depends. It depends. I think that, like we were talking about, when you are maybe in a country property, you do have the mud. You also have the factor of just desirability of your landscape.
Yeah.
If you have a nice country property, maybe you have a hay field, you have a small farm that you're selling, or you just have a gorgeous yard. Some people really have put a lot of money and time and effort into their yard, and you're not going to appreciate that in the winter months. So there are those houses. But I think overall, it's not a bad time to go in the winter because you always are going to have those people that still need to buy, and fewer people are going to be listing in the winter.
Yeah.
So you do. I think you have an advantage, but it also depends on your property. I think it's not right for every property.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. I mean, I do talk to people that have, big, beautiful properties on the river, and they have the fields, the alfalfa fields, or whatever they have in regard to
Big
landscape.
trees.
Yeah. And at that point, it's like that becomes such a large amenity, such a huge selling point, that are you really making the right decision if you put it on before it greens up, before you get all those big, beautiful trees? I mean, sometimes the fall is the best for those types of properties, but that is a valid point. I mean, it really depends on the property. I would say the majority of properties, especially in New Mexico, don't face those types of challenges. Colorado, more so, because there's a lot more greenery there. But yeah, it really depends property to property, case by case. Paul, thoughts?
I was just thinking about it. Those are all great points. One disadvantage to a listing in the winter is less sunlight. Mm-hmm. So it gets dark a lot quicker. So your window for looking at houses definitely narrows. If you can't do it till after work or something like that, you lose the sun by 5:30, 6 o'clock. So that's a disadvantage. But the other thing is, if you can put the lights on the house, start a fire, when it's colder outside and you go into a warm house inside,
it feels like home.
It feels like home. Those are the things, like Melissa was saying, if you can see where the Christmas tree is going to be, if you can see yourself around a fire or something like that, those are the things that really sell the house. So those are my thoughts on advantage and disadvantage.
Yeah. I mean, that really does bring up a good point in the sense that your time, your ability to see the property, that window. I mean, gosh, how many hours of daylight do we have? It seems like when we do fall back, your days are just so short. And then you play the factor that plays into sometimes, if you have a vacant home, it's almost like if you're on teetering on it being vacant, go all the way vacant. I mean, that's another episode altogether, how to navigate whether a fully furnished, a staged, or a vacant property. But I mean, if you're teetering between actually having some furniture in the home or living there or having it vacant, temperatures, mud being brought in.
Yeah, leave the heat on if it's going to be vacant in the winter.
Yeah,
leave the utilities on.
Yeah. Yep, the lights as well. But I think the Christmas tree factor is a real thing. I mean, especially at that time of year, like if you can go in and you feel that warmth, you feel the coziness of the property. I mean, that's a case by case thing too. But you have to have sellers that have that vibe too. I don't know if you guys experience that. Some homes just have different energies. But if you have a seller that's really good at that, I mean, that can make all the difference in the world. So very interesting to think about how those little things can make a sell or even make you more money.
Well, yeah. And the thinking around the holiday season is, if you have a big family, can we fit everybody around a table here? Can we put an extra table? Where's the kids' table going to go? Yeah. Is there parking? Those are things that in June or July, you may not factor in. Yeah. But around now, that's exactly what they're thinking about.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. Yep. Other thoughts, Sarah?
My only thought was decorations, though. If people have Christmas decorations all over, what are they like? They're very stylized, So certain people like certain things. Maybe you like the white or the gold or the silver. So if or the red and green, that's the one thing that I'm like, can get a little iffy, I think, is if you have so many decorations that it overwhelms the house.
And the buyer will be distracted because they're looking at the decorations and not the house.
I don't know about you guys. I love when I put my tree up and it looks so nice and cozy and homey. But when I take it down, it feels like triple the size in the room. It
does.
Yeah.
So my house too.
Feels empty. Yep. Well, I have an aunt that loves all things trinkets, like just trinkets. And so to your point, like we would be having a serious conversation like, look, I know you love this and it's very much, something that portrays your personality, but this is not going to resonate with buyers that come in and just go, oh my gosh, I feel like, someone who feels super overwhelmed when they walk into some of our grocery stores, the people that don't live in this country and they walk into our grocery, see all the groceries. They're like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
Same type of thing with a buyer that walks into a home that's just filled with stuff. So to your point, I think that's something to be cognizant of, but what would you do to counter that? I mean, what kind of conversations would you be having with the seller to say, hey, do it tastefully, but try not to hurt their feelings, right? I mean, because everyone wants to be proud of their style.
You could always approach the subject with a seller of just, being that it's the holiday season, they still need to have a holiday, but be minimal. Be minimal with it. Just be aware of how much room you're taking up in your house, because you still want the buyer to come in and feel that holiday season, but you want them also to see the space, and you want them to realize that they can fit their furniture in the house.
Yeah.
There's not really going to be, 7 snowmen and 4 reindeer in the living room at all times, and there's no place for a recliner.
Sure.
Yeah.
They will definitely, you will definitely lose that if you overdo it. So,
on our end too, we could always take pictures, do video walkthroughs, get everything done before, maybe do a week of showings prior. So maybe we list it late November, early December, and then they can always put it up while it's under contract too, because realistically, we're not going to be closing on Christmas.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So that,
best of both worlds.
Planning critical. Obviously, that's why you need a competent realtor, someone that's going to have some foresight and say, ooh, we're coming into the holiday season. Like, what's your plans? If we're going to do this, let's go ahead and take these pictures now. Or are you able and willing to do something very minimalistic that's not over the top? So those conversations, they seem so trivial, and they almost seem intrusive to a seller, I can imagine. But those conversations those little details matter. I mean, do they not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. When talking to a seller, like we just came out of the Thanksgiving break, and the buyers' calls that come in definitely died down quite a bit. Everybody was just taking the break for the, school's out, all that kind of stuff. Everybody's with family. Showings are not necessarily going to happen. So when you're talking to sellers about when's the best time to list, it's probably not, that initial splash effect on the market. You don't want to do it when we know there's not going to be buyers actively looking.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent point. I mean, if you're going into a holiday weekend, you don't want to put the home on the market on Friday.
Right.
People are going to be out of town. There's going to be events. I mean, you just lose that splash effect of a new listing hitting the market. And that is one thing I enjoy about a small town. I love that about a small town is like we tend to kind of shut down, and enjoy these holidays. And it's not expected, but it's just kind of the norm that our town follows that pulse of like, well, it's Christmas. We're going to slow down for a couple of days, and then we'll pick back up once the holidays are done, between Christmas and New Year's or whatever else. I love that fact. Where the bigger cities, you have a little more constant hustle and bustle.
Right.
But yeah, I think so. The timing of going to market is critical in that regard. And I haven't seen, what are your thoughts on like buyers slowing down in the winter months? I've heard, I've experienced obviously sellers saying, I just want to wait till after the first of the year. They're just so convinced that it's just a bad time to sell, even through the conversations. And that's totally okay. Everyone has their choice. But do you see buyers that are dropping off during that time and they say, I'll just wait till after the first? Is that something you experience?
Well, I'll take that one. Over the years, I usually say, yes, it slows down like end of the year, January, February. And there's a huge uptick either March or April, depending on the year. So we always say like the calls start really coming in when spring hits and, the trees are budding. That time of the year, people are starting to buy again. Everything's starting to green up. So there is a slowdown, but like you say, at the end of the year, people are, I deal a lot with investors, and people are trying to get either things off their books or trying to buy something for tax purposes. So at the end of the year is busy. I think January, February, snow's on the ground. Buyers kind of slow down a little bit.
Okay. So, and I've experienced maybe I don't know if the opposite, but I haven't experienced it to that degree. I've experienced people saying, hey, I'm going to be out of pocket this week or that week. But buyers, in my experience, have been more of, I'm looking. If I find something December 15th, I'm pulling the trigger on it. So to me, it seems like it's more of buyers don't peel off as much as you would think. They're still actively looking, where you get the peel off with the sellers. And that kind of brings us to the beginning of the conversation, was that you have a lack of inventory, which means that for sellers, it's going to help promote their homes. They may get more money for their homes, case by case. Obviously, if it's a big, beautiful green property in the summer months, it may not be the most advantageous. But what's your experience in regard to buyers? Do they fall off in the winter months, or do they just stay in there? Maybe they're just not as actively looking.
I think that's my experience. I don't think any of them necessarily say, I'm just going to wait a few months and start looking again. Mm-hmm. They're always looking. But during the holidays, they're taking it slower. They're not looking at the MLS every day, or they're not looking at Zillow or Realtor.com. They're not seeing the new listings. They may not be doing that. They may not be as aggressive and eager to look every day. But exactly, they would never, if their house came up, they certainly would say, I'm not ready. Let's just wait a while. Yeah. They would absolutely still purchase.
I tend to agree that there's no real hard stop. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I'm not going to look from December to, January, because like if the right property came up, they're ready to pull the trigger.
Right.
And to Paul's point, and I know Aspen, you have a lot of experience in the commercial arena, but to Paul's point, people are trying to get things off or on the books by the first of the year. What's your thoughts there?
That's what I was going to say as well. Is I almost have a little bit of the opposite with Paul as well. It seems like a lot of my investor commercial clients, they're saying, well, we can put it under contract now, because I'm finding a bigger influx of buyers in the winter months seems to be. I mean, I primarily do listings, but they seem to be going under contract and selling these last months. But I do have a lot of sellers that say, perfect, but push it off till the first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit opposite, but same idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't say that I necessarily see buyers fall off. Maybe I wouldn't even really say a different type of buyer. I think it just depends on who's looking at the time. And
Yep. And that's really why people need to get with a competent realtor, because they get, the pulse of the market, the feel of the market just ebb and flows. There's a constant ebb and flow. And that changes. I mean, it just literally changes week to week, month to month, even day to day in some instances. So, complex market, complex strategies, you need the right realtor there to walk you through that and give you a true picture, like a transparent picture. Like, look, we still have a ton of inventory, right? So maybe it is better, especially with your property, to wait till after the first or whatever else. Or, hey, you know what? We've really seen a skinny up and our buyers are still pushing right now. I mean, there is that ebb and flow in the market.
I was going to say too, whenever I first started, I mainly worked with first-time home buyers, which I'm sure a lot of us were similar. Before you specialize, you kind of work with anybody. I found that they wanted to go see homes on the breaks because they weren't working necessarily. So they wanted to go see during Thanksgiving break, Christmas break. So not necessarily on Christmas or Thanksgiving. You still need to set your boundaries a little bit. But they still wanted to go see during those times. So it really just depends on your house. Yeah. If it's maybe something that would be appealing to a first-time home buyer or someone who has a little bit more availability during a break, perfect time to sell.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good point.
Yep. And I've been on both sides of the fence from an investor standpoint. Like sometimes I want to get it closed before the end of the year for a variety of reasons. And then other times I'm like, I don't want to deal with the taxes until the following year. So let's close right after the first. Yeah. So it is a trigger point for a lot of people because they can play with one side of the fence or the other, especially with investment properties. So that's interesting to say, but I would think, I mean, just giving a summary to what we're discussing, that it very much is a case by case, that sellers shouldn't be, correct me if I'm wrong, or if anyone has a different opinion, sellers should not be afraid to sell in the winter months. In fact, oftentimes it's a better time to sell because you have lower competition and there are still buyers out there. But you need to talk with a realtor that can say, here's a transparent picture of the market and how we're going. But by and large, I would say most sellers would be benefited to go and compete against less properties, especially when you have still, strong buyers in the market.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts there?
We are very lucky to live in the Four Corners. We're in this high desert climate. Yes, we do have winter here, but we don't have those harsh northeastern winters.
Ice storms.
Exactly. So yeah, we might have a day or two that maybe we're not going to get buyers looking at properties because there's an inch of snow out there. But I don't think winter should deter you because of the weather. Unless, like we said, if you've got a beautiful property that you need to really market the grounds on it. But we live in a great area to where we can market a property any time of the year.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great area in that regard. Okay. We're moving on to the speed round. This is where you put your final stamp on the big question. Is selling your home in the winter months good or bad? The boss first.
I say overall, it's good.
Overall,
I think it depends on your individual situation, but a good, competent realtor can help guide you through that and decide if it's the right time for you. But I say for most people, I would say yes.
Okay. Aspen?
It's my favorite time to sell. With that, I do think, like Shannon said, you need a realtor and honestly a good CPA if you're looking at the investment tax purposes that you can trust, and they're not just trying to get it closed quickly, and they can give you the ins and outs of why it is a good or bad time, because like we said, not all properties are the same.
Exactly.
Yep. Following that trend. Yes, it is a good time to sell. It is a good time to buy in the winter. If it's right for you, it's always the right time.
Yep. So. Great answer. Paul Berry.
I always tell sellers that you can't sell what's not on the market. So if you need to sell it, any time of the year is a good year or a good time. I would say all the reasons that houses do sell, make sure that it's in good condition, make sure it's priced appropriately, and use a realtor to help you through all that.
Yep. Bait in the water.
Yep.
Right. Got to get the bait in the water. So fantastic. And my final thoughts would be the same. I think we're all on the same page. By and large, selling in the winter months could be very beneficial to a seller. Now, it is case by case. There are certain instances where it doesn't make sense, but I would say the vast majority of the time, selling in the winter months, which is probably surprising to our viewers, is a good idea.
Yep.
Right? Unless there's a compelling reason not to. So thank you for that awesome discussion. Let's move into my favorite part of the podcast, which is called the Lyons Pride. As you all know, we are the Lyons Group, a team of top brokers here in the Four Corners region. And we have produced and worked in our community for many, many years, decades now. And we'd like to take a moment and highlight someone who's going to add to the pride. As a group of Lyons. We support and work with each other, and we do great things in our community. And we like to highlight others that do that as well. So today, Paul is going to highlight someone in our community that should be included in the Pride.
Okay, thanks, Ben. For this episode, I have chosen Robbins Heating and Air Conditioning. They have a program that they have for the last few years they've been doing. They've been taking nominations from the community on somebody who's in need of some assistance in the heating or cooling world. So for the last few years, they've been able to give out free furnaces to needy families. This year, they gave out 3 furnaces, and they did additional gift baskets with gift certificates to home improvement stores. We were fortunate enough to be able to help in that regard this year with a donation. But they do some great work, and happy to showcase them here on the Pride.
Robbins is just fantastic. I mean, we have a lot of great companies here locally, but Robbins is certainly one of the best. And the fact that they reach out into the community and do these great things with the furnaces for families that need this stuff, they provide baskets. I mean, they don't get a ton of publicity for that, if any. Right. I mean, they're just doing good things in our community. So big shout out to Robbins, all the workers there, Drew and the owner and everybody in between. I mean, everyone there is fantastic. I've never had a bad experience with them. But we want to say that we see you. We appreciate you. We appreciate what you do in our community, and welcome to the Lyons Pride. Thank you for what you do. So we've had some great discussion today on selling in winter months. I think hopefully it'll add some insight and value for anybody that's on the fence, looking to sell their property. And as a buyer is concerned, if you're looking to buy in the winter months, don't take the foot off the pedal. I mean, there are still deals coming up constantly. So get with the right realtor and get with the right professional that's going to guide you through that process. That's what it's really about. If you'd like to hear us talk about something specific on the Den, comment on this video and throw out some ideas. We love to have some engagement with our viewers. You can also send an email to team@sjcbroker.com. You can go and stay up on all of our trends, what's happening with the Lyons Group. Our Facebook group is the Lyons Group Four Corners. Go like that page because you'll see the updates. You'll see these podcasts come through on the regular, and we just would love to work with you. So if you want to figure out or find out, I should say, what the Lyons Group brings to the table and the advantage we bring as a group of working professionals and veterans, then please go to sjcbroker.com, find out more about us. You can schedule an appointment with any of us for a consultation. So thank you for listening. We look forward to working with you. And if you have any questions, reach out. So until the next episode. Thank you for listening to The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed on real estate happenings. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group, visit sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in the Den.